shoot. Fires from the top of the key and banks it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Francois, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Felicia. This is episode 7, and this was an important road trip for the New York Liberty. The first big road trip of the season with tough matchups ahead. We had on Tuesday the game against the Connecticut Sun. Thursday, the big matchup with the super team, the Las Vegas Aces. And then Sunday, a tough matchup against the Seattle Storm that is starting to now figure things out and get a little bit better. So a lot of things to look forward to. So let's jump into the first game that took place on Tuesday. And the New York Liberty took care of business 89-81 against a very greedy Connecticut Sun team. Felicia, where should we start?
Well, it was a great game. I think this time around they were more aggressive. It was a pretty even matchup between the 2 and 3 seed. I was thinking that this game would be pretty tight. You know, both teams are sort of battling for that 2-3 position in the leaderboard. And so, I think they had to come out. The Liberty had to come out aggressive this game, and they definitely did that. I was definitely proud of Sloot. She had 17 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds. We definitely needed her to score some baskets. She's always great with assists and steals and rebounds, but we needed the point factor this time around, and she did that, and she was very aggressive, which I love to see. She was definitely the general on the floor. JJ and Stewie did their thing. I think overall it was a great win. They still got some things to work out, especially closing games sometimes. I think, it's sort of like a tale of two halves with them at times, like first half or second half. One half is great and the other half is sort of iffy. And so I think, there's still some things to work out, but they got the win. I'm happy with that, and yeah.
All right, so let's break down this game. The first half was high, intense basketball. I think we expected both teams to be very defensive and be a really gritty game, but it was actually a surprisingly high-tempo, highly offensive game. You have to give props to the Connecticut Sun, who lost one of the best players with Brianna Jones, who unfortunately tore Achilles. So even though they lost one of the best players, they're still one of the top teams in the league, and you knew that it was going to be a tough game. So it was very pleasant to watch in the first half. Stewie and JJ were dominant in the paint. I think now JJ is starting to see her matchups and see where she could dominate, and I was glad to see that the Liberty gave her the ball more on the inside. Stewie, I think we take her for granted, but she delivers every single game, and that game was no exception. In the first quarter, she scored 8 points and became the fastest player to reach 4,000 points in just 196 games. And when you look at that list, you have players like Diana Taurasi, Elena Donadon. So she's in very good company, and we're so grateful that she's on that team and be the leader that she is. So what did you make of Jewell Jones? I mentioned her earlier and her contribution. I know we talked a lot about her role on the team and how she could best contribute, but what did you make of her contribution?
I always think she's doing great. I think she's getting better. Jonquil always starts out great in the first half, and I don't know if it's a coach's decision, how they play her, but, she starts out great. They're feeding her the ball. She's aggressive. Everything seems to be going well, but then it sort of fades a little bit in the second half. And, I'd like to see a more complete game from her. I know we had, there's ebbs and flows to every basketball game. So, I don't expect her to always have, high numbers every single, quarter. But I do think you see the first half, they're usually getting her the ball, getting inside. She's aggressive, and then it's almost like her role changes come the second half. So I would really like to see them still I don't know if it's also an adjustment maybe, because when they're getting her the ball on the inside, sometimes the passes aren't great, and they might be passing the ball a little too low for her, and then she gets double teamed, and so I just think they have to do a little bit better in feeding her the ball on the inside.
Yeah, and I think they did that a little bit better in this game. I just felt like with the game against Atlanta, where she had also another double-double, that was probably one of the most consistent performances of of Jonquel Jones. Sorry, and so we hoped to see that more often. She was a strong presence on defense. She had a couple nice block, a lot of rebounds. And when you look at her stats at the end of the game, she was the highest plus minus on the Liberty team with plus 21. She ended up with 14 points and 11 rebounds. And 4 blocks. So a very strong performance for Jonquel Jones, which we hope would lead to many other great performances like this.
I think she's getting better, though. I think every game you see the improvement. You see her coming up. So, from the very first game this year to now, it's a huge improvement. And I know she's coming off of an injury. So it takes time. But, I really would, I hope to see that, as each game comes, that she'll just continue to improve and we'll see those numbers go up.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Courtney Vandersloot. And what I noticed for this game was the fact that I felt that she was better suited for this matchup against the Connecticut Sun as the point guard than Sabrina Ionescu. We've talked about this a lot, whether it's on the podcast or when we watch the games. The challenge for Sabrina when she faces strong defenses like, the Aces, the Sun, or the Mystics, and that proved once again that she was struggling when they were putting a lot of pressure on her, trying to double team her. She had a couple of turnovers. Her first basket only came in the second quarter. So what should we say between the role that Sabrina should have versus Vandersloot, and who should be the point guard?
Well, I definitely think Vandersloot should be the point guard. I think for Sabrina, we've always said that she's better off the ball. And so Vandersloot should definitely be the point guard. She should definitely be carrying the ball up the court. For Sabrina, she's good, but I just think Vandersloot is better in that position. And that helps Sabrina to get to her spots when she doesn't have to carry the ball up. It makes it a bit easier for her. Yeah, teams will double team her. They know she's a 3-point threat. And so, she's always going to draw attention because she is a great basketball player. So she should draw attention. So it's going to be more Vandersloot who should really be the point guard of this team, be that general. She sees the court. I think it's just a better matchup overall for them.
And Courtney Vandersloot, who has been struggling this season in terms of three-point percentage. I think it's the lowest of her career. She has around 25%. She rectified that in this game. She had 2 threes in the first quarter, 6 points. She had 3 rebounds, 3 assists. She was very aggressive when the team needed points in the paint. So definitely for those kind of matchup, Vandersloot brings that sort of general kind of vibe that the team needs. So let's move on now to the second half. Second half, we started, we had a 4-point lead in the first half. Second half, we started strong. Stewie had 2 threes. Jonquel Jones had a free as well. Then she also had an N1, which gave the Liberty a 60 points lead. So at that moment, I was feeling very confident. I was like, oh, maybe after all, it's not going to be a tight game and we're going to have a dominant performance from the Liberty. But as we know, it's still a work in progress with this team. And there's still obviously areas of concern. Transition defense is one of them. I cannot recall the number of times that the Connecticut Sun score with fast breaks, or after conceding a basket, they just pass the ball really quickly to someone that went straight to the basket. They score a lot of points in the paint. Let's not forget that they're the number one team in terms of scoring points in the paint. So they knew how to attack the Liberty and sort of pinpoint the weaknesses of the Liberty. But there's two players that really brought the Sun back into this game, Dejanay Carrington and Olivia Nelson-Ododa. It was insane. The third quarter, Dejanay Carrington got on fire. I don't know if you ever got to play when you were young that video game, NBA Jam. But, when you were playing that game, if you started scoring a couple of baskets with one specific player, they will tell you that the next time you get the ball will be on fire, and it doesn't matter where you would shoot the ball, it will go in. And I felt like it was a little bit like that with Dejanay Carrington in that third quarter. She scored 11 points in the last 4 minutes of the quarter, and the Connecticut Sun had a 16-5 run to finish that quarter. What did you make of those performances?
I don't think the Liberty were quite ready
They were not, obviously.
for Dejanay Carrington, that's for sure. I think they she got on fire. I think sometimes we may pay more attention to players like Alyssa Thomas, and you're paying attention to the starters, quote unquote. And you're not paying attention sometimes to the bench players as they should. And Connecticut is great, top to bottom. This is not an easy team to face at all. They are strong. They're strong offensively and defensively. They are tough. And so you can't lose momentum. You can't take your foot off the gas. And I think the Liberty did that a little bit in this game. And they came back, and Connecticut fought back to take the lead at one point.
Yeah, they took the lead in the fourth quarter. Alyssa Thomas scored a basket against Stewie, which gave her her third triple double of the season, and I think now she's got 5 triple doubles, if I'm not mistaken, in her career, which makes her the player with the most triple-double in the WNBA history. And when you look back on the fact that she wasn't even picked as a starter for the WNBA All-Star game,
which is crazy.
It's a little bit puzzling, but I think sometimes people forget that the starters, it's also a popularity contest.
Yeah.
Like, obviously you try to vote for the best players, but also there's a sort of likability factor, or maybe people that you see more at the forefront or that are more exposed. And let's be honest, as great as Alyssa Thomas is as a player, we obviously not rooting for the Connecticut Sun, we're rooting for the Liberty. And every time we face her and the Sun, she's a ruthless player. Like, sometimes we can even argue a bit of a dirty player. So there's probably this factor that comes in play when it comes to her not being picked as a starter. Definitely you could argue that the media don't share a light too much on the Sun. So those factors potentially come in play when it comes to picking the starters. But she was picked as a reserve, and deservedly so, because she made our life very difficult in this game. She was doing pretty much everything, rebounding, passing like Magic Johnson, upping the tempo. And so at that very moment, when she scored that basket to give her a triple-double, the Connecticut Sun took a 1-point lead. And, we were in trouble. And I think this is when Sandy Brandello started to make a few changes in her rotation.
Yeah, she needed to switch it up, I think. And she did it at the right time. With a 1-point lead, you see the momentum is shifting. You see that 16-point lead just basically disappear very quickly. And so it was important for her to make those changes and get the defensive stop. So you had to put in other players like Thornton and just trying to get a defensive presence to get those stops they needed.
Yeah, it was interesting because she didn't put Sabrina or Marine Johannes in those last 3 to 4 minutes. She went with a more defensive lineup. So Kayla Foreign, Betnijah Laney, Jonko Jones, Brenna Stewart, and Van Sloot. And you could tell that it was the right decision. They were not necessarily great in terms of like shooting mid-range shots, so they kept like feeding the ball on the inside. But the turning point was in the last 2 minutes. Betnijah Laney, who's once again such an underrated player in the eyes of the world, I think. She wasn't unfortunately picked as a reserve for the All-Star game, but she really deserved a spot. She brought a lot of versatility on offense in that game. She was scoring on the inside in the first half or shooting threes, but her free with about 2 minutes left was really what lifted the Liberty, isn't it?
Yeah, it was crucial. I think Laney, I've always said this from the beginning of this podcast, Laney and Thornton are your two players that can ground the Liberty defensively and even offensively. They are both, great players who not just for their defensive presence but offensive. And Betnijah Laney has definitely come alive with her 3-point making for sure. Her corner threes, that's her thing it seems. But this three to give the Liberty that lead, and then even for Thornton to seal the deal towards that last minute of the game, it's a testament to just how strong these ladies are, and they wanted to win, and they grinded it out with their team.
Yeah, I don't think the Connecticut Sun were expecting Kayla Foreign to be the decisive player on offense. There was a nice pick and roll with Stewie, and she was pretty much left wide open. Now, obviously, the screen is set, to create some space, but I don't think that the Sun were expecting Foreign to take the shot, because I think it was Elisa Thomas that was on her, and she literally gave her the space to take the shot, and she made them pay. I think they don't realize how good Foreign is with outside shooting. I think she's probably having a record season in terms of field goal percentage from the threes. But that was definitely the decisive basket with about 40 to 45 seconds left on the clock, and giving a comfortable lead for the Liberty to take this win against a tough opponent. I was really happy with this win. It was a very pleasant game overall, very few turnovers for both teams. JJ and Stewie being dominant. And post-game, Van Sloot was saying how grateful she is to play with a player like Brenna Stewart. It was probably the biggest reasons for her to come to the Liberty. Obviously, she was also intrigued by Sandy Brandello being the coach. She said that she wants to be coach, but Brenna Stewart was definitely the number one reason. She said after the game that she makes other players better. She kind of pushes them to step up their game. And it's funny because even a player like Van Sloot, who's a veteran, who's been in this league for a very long time, she still wants to learn and still want to play with the best and elevate a game. So that was a nice little, she gave her flowers to Stewie, who was glowing at that moment when she gave her those compliments, and there was a nice little connection in that post-game conference. So, great win, and now I cannot do the music of I don't know, Rocky or but let's move on. Oh, sorry, I don't want to have I don't want to have copyright infringement. But basically, the game that everybody was looking for is I don't really like this term, the super teams, but obviously the matchup that everybody was waiting on Thursday, the Las Vegas Aces against the New York Liberty. And before we start diving into this game, I thought that it was very interesting before the game, the pre-game conference. Sloot and Sabrina were asked a couple of questions, and Sloot was said that their focus for this game is going to be defense because they want to win games, and obviously they're aware that the Vegas Aces were going to be a challenge for them, and so they were really looking forward to a good basketball game with two great teams. The questions was asked by Doug Feinberg during that pregame conference. But another question from Jackie Powell, she asked about to Sabrina, sort of areas where she could sort of continue to improve a game, and she was asked specifically about defense. It was very interesting that these questions were asked before the game, and Sabrina was, pretty honest in an assessment of what she needs to do. She's aware that, she's not the greatest defender just yet, but that she's definitely quicker in the lateral movements, that she put a lot of emphasis and a lot of work on the defense in the offseason. So I've definitely seen improvements. But oh boy, first quarter against the Aces, it looked like they came with a plan. What was that plan, Felicia?
Well, the Aces, listen, you have to give credit to the Las Vegas Aces. They are a well-oiled machine. They have played together for some time, and the Liberty just got caught on the back foot a little bit, I think.
You think? I mean,
I don't want to say it, but I'm like, this game, they got punched in the mouth. They got punched in the mouth. It definitely showed you why Las Vegas is the number one team, and deservedly so. As much as we love the Liberty, you could see that there's still a lot of work to do, and not just for them, for all the teams, because the Vegas Aces are number one, and so anybody they face, they've only lost one game this season.
They said that it's the best start in in the WNBA history since the Houston Comets. So that was a long time ago, because that was like the first kind of dominant team in the history of the WNBA. So they're no joke.
No, I mean you could tell from the first quarter this was going to be. I knew it would be a tough game. I wanted it to be close. I was really hoping this wouldn't be a blowout. I was like, just keep it close. I wanted the Liberty to win, obviously. If they won, I thought the Liberty would win by like 2 or 3 points, max. I didn't realize the blowout would come. I mean, we saw it come second half, but they definitely weren't prepared for this level, I think. And, they just have to play more pride, be more aggressive. I just think the Aces just ate them up, and you saw it from the minute they did a switch, and Sabrina ended up on
Chelsea Gray.
Yeah, and the minute I saw that play,
we were panicking.
I was like, oh no, this can't happen. I was like, you can't have Sabrina on Chelsea Gray, and she made her bucket. So I think, this was a game where they definitely targeted Sabrina. I don't know if they saw the pregame conference or what, but they definitely targeted Sabrina on defense.
Yeah.
And that was tough. I know Sabrina is not the worst defensive player by any means, but she's definitely a weaker link on defense, I would say, against the Aces especially. So.
No, what did I tell you? Since we started this podcast, that was my biggest worry. I was already projecting myself towards that game against the Aces, and I was telling you I'm really worried about perimeter defense, and once we start facing teams that have like those incredible guards that are quick and can shoot from anywhere and go to the basket, I'm really worried that the Liberty are gonna struggle. And it wasn't that shocking, but the fact that they deliberately targeted Sabrina in that first quarter, Kelsey Plum Chelsea Gray, I was like, oh boy, we're up for some night. And yeah, it was crushing to see how well they were able to figure out the favorable matchup. And at some point, like you mentioned that play with Chelsea Gray and Sabrina. So I think originally, they had Betnijah Laney on Chelsea Gray or Kelsey Player, I can't remember, which was a great idea. But then it was a pick and roll. They had to switch, and Sabrina ended up facing Chelsea Gray. Unfortunately, it led to an easy basket for Chelsea.
But again, I think, you just got to give credit where credit's due. The Aces, they are a super team. Yeah. Definition of a super team, it is them. And so I think, they have played for some time together. They have the addition also of Candace Parker. It top to bottom, or at least for their starters, 1 through 5, they can all hurt you. Yeah. Any one of them can hurt you. And, I think that is just a testament. You got a great team, a great coach, and the Liberty are still gelling. They're still working things out, and you can't do that against the Aces. You can't be in this method of trying to still figure things out. Facing them, you have to, everyone, top to bottom, has to come ready. And, I think the Liberty tried to do that. I think the first half wasn't that bad.
No, because
I think it was a fight. I do think initially it was a game, for sure. It was going back and forth. The Aces definitely kept the lead, but the Liberty were still in there. I thought, if they just keep this, to single digits, where the Aces have not too much of a lead, they can easily get back in this. And I really thought that, but come the second half, the Aces had a different plan.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the Liberty stay afloat because they still have a lot of talent. Yeah. Sabrina was struggling offensively, but she was trying to contribute in other ways. She had 5 assists and 3 rebounds. JJ and Stewie were still dominant in the paint, which really kept us afloat. Stewie was struggling. She had a lot of turnovers. And so despite having 8 turnovers in the first half, they were only trading by 7 points. It could have even been 4 points at halftime, but we were still sort of still alive, still have a pulse. But yeah, like you said, third quarter, it was like, I don't know, a boxing game where you corner somewhere and you keep receiving blows after blows after blows, and it's hard for you to not fall into the ground. Yeah. But that third quarter was lethal. Yeah,
they picked them apart, essentially. And the third quarter, I will have to say, though, I wish, for Brondello that they made the necessary changes in the third quarter, and it just didn't happen. They needed defense. They needed to stop the bleeding at all costs. And, yeah, you had Thornton in there at times, but I think during the game, I was just like, you just need defense. You just need, at this point, you got to stop the bleeding. It's going way out of hand.
I mean, they started, the Las Vegas Aces started the quarter with an 11-0 run.
Yeah.
And it just came from everywhere. Like, you look at the stats, and you were mentioning how strong the starting lineup is. Candace Parker had 15 points. Asia Wilson, 16 points. Chelsea Gray, 14 points. Kelsey Plum, 18 points. Jackie Young, 15 points. And then you even had Kia Stokes, who, is not necessarily known for being an offensive player. She had 7 points. Alicia Clark had 9 points. So the danger came from everywhere.
It came from all sides.
And they were overwhelmed. And to be fair, a lot of people have said that Becky Hammond is a mastermind as a coach, and obviously that's why the Aces were really trying their best to get her into coaching that team and made her the highest salary as a coach in the WNBA. And that's also another reason why they were able to acquire Candace Parker. Candace Parker had mentioned before the season that she was really intrigued by the way she coached the team, Becky Hammond, and she really wanted to sort of pick her brain and really be coached by someone with such a brain for the game. And let's be honest, she had coached Sandy Brandello in that game. The Liberty were not ready for this matchup.
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, I think especially come the third quarter, I don't know what adjustments were. I mean, the Aces were already doing their thing, and they made a couple adjustments, but they just put their foot down. They put their foot on the gas, and they did not look back. And unfortunately for the Liberty, when they needed stops, they just couldn't get them. And surprisingly, when she put Willoughby in the fourth quarter, that's when some of the bleeding stopped. But at that point, it was too late. It was too late. I was like,
it was the bench player that were there, and at that time, like, even if Vegas starts putting all their starting lineup on the bench, it's over.
Yeah, so it's pretty much done at that point. And but Willoughby came in when some of the starters were still on the floor, and she had a couple of defensive stops. It made me wonder, what if you had put Willoughby in the third quarter? Even, obviously you don't want to put all defense out there and not have any offense. But she also made some points. Did she have more points than Sabrina, or close to what Sabrina had?
She had, let me look at the stats. She had 5 points, and Sabrina had 7 points. Willoughby, 5 points in 10 minutes, and Sabrina, 7 points in 24 minutes. So, yeah.
She had an impact. I just wish that, we were definitely missing more of a defensive presence all around to put a stop to some of the offensive prowess of the Aces. But again, she was out-coached, and the team just didn't play with the aggression they needed to. They just didn't play with the pride they needed to have in their team. It's almost like they got sucker punched, and they were just dazed and confused the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think for me that was, the biggest disappointment of the game. I mean, losing against the Las Vegas Aces, or wherever you're the Liberty or another team, there's nothing embarrassing in that, because the Aces are at the moment on course to be one of the greatest teams to ever play this game. So there's nothing to be ashamed of to lose that game. But it's just the way they lost that game. It's like, it's almost like they gave up. Like, as soon as they got the first big punch, like there was no fight. Like, you could tell, like, they were like very quiet, like their heads were down. And you knew, like, that's it. Like, they're not going to come back. And Brandello did say after the game, she said that we got frustrated. Things were too easy, and that's where I was disappointed. We didn't have enough fight individually and collectively as a team. And they just went away from what their identity is. So, that was very, very, like, disappointing to see that the Liberty were just giving up pretty much.
Yeah, I think once you got Stewie double teamed, and you're forcing turnovers, you're targeting Sabrina, you could tell how they were targeting different people, and they knew exactly how to pick the Liberty apart, and they just executed better. They just, ultimately, this game is execution, and the Aces executed the best. And again, they are the number one team. They've only had one loss this season. They have not lost at home yet, so they protected home court.
Yeah, so what could have been almost like a 30-point loss ended up being a 17-point loss, 98-81. And it really shows you that there's still a long road for the Liberty to be a title contender. But I think that even the Aces, they try to be cautious, because even post-game, they said that, it's still early in the season to make any predicament for the end of the season. And they're pretty much aware that if, eventually if they face the Liberty in the playoff or in the finals, that it will probably be a different team, because there's still a lot of games. So there's still time to figure things out for for the Liberty. But yeah, there's a long way to go to be able to compete against the Aces.
But I also think maybe this is something the Liberty needed. They needed to face the top team so they themselves can go back, look at film, look at what they need to do individually as players and as a team, as a collective, to know what they got to do when they get closer to playoffs, when they get to some of these other teams that, playoff time, it's a different level. And so they got a taste of what it takes to be the number one seed. And if they're trying to get there, if they're trying to be on top at the end of this season, this is the game that showed them like what they need to do. So hopefully they go back in the lab and they make the necessary adjustments, corrections, and just they still got half a season so to try to work this out. And I think they can. We'll see what happens in the next games between the Aces and the Liberty, especially at Barclays, home court, hopefully.
I wait for that.
The Aces aren't they've won, but they're not as dominant, I would say, when they're not on their home court. So maybe that will give the Liberty an edge, when they come here. Hopefully, we want to see good basketball, and we definitely don't want to see blowout. Well, we don't mind if the Liberty are blowing people out, but we definitely don't want to see blowouts, where the Liberty just look a bit deflated or just frustrated and, kind of giving up. So, yeah, but, there's room to grow.
Well, I mean, basically, there was not a lot of time to overthink this because a couple of days later, they were once again on the road and back in Seattle. They had played in Seattle earlier this season, so that was the second game for Brianna Stewart back in former team, former home, and you could tell in the first half that the Liberty wanted to put that game against the Aces behind them. And they started very strongly. Like, they were on a mission. Like, we're going to set the tone very quickly and show who we are to the Storm. And so that was a very strong start for the Liberty.
Yeah, I think, from the Aces game, and that, for some teams, when you take a punch like that, it either makes you stronger or you give up. And that's not something the Liberty will do. And so I knew that coming into this game, I was like, they're going to have way more fight because coming off of the Las Vegas game, they wanted to win. They want to make sure they put the game away, and they did that. Stewie, again, being Stewie.
There's something about coming back home where it's like, I know you guys miss me, and I'm going to show exactly why. She had 14 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, she's an all-star. There's a reason why she is who she is. She's a phenomenal player. Coming home, you're a bit more comfortable. You not necessarily that she has anything to prove, but, you're home, you're comfortable, or your former home, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And, you want to make sure you put your stamp down, at your former workplace, I guess. And so, yeah, it was all Stewie first quarter, pretty much. And I think they definitely, all the players came out aggressive. They had, I don't know, how many steals did they have in this game?
Wow, they had 16 steals, so...
Well, yeah, they were disruptive from the start of the game, from Stewie, Sloot, Johannes. I mean, everyone got into the stealing game.
I mean, that was like a couple of things that I really liked. The fact that they put a lot of intensity on the defensive end, which caused the Storm to have quite a few turnovers. And I think so far I've noticed that the Liberty are very good on the half court, but they could be so lethal if they play a little faster.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. When they put pressure on the Storm, who turned over the ball quite a few times, and the way they just played those fast breaks were really incredible. Like Sloot, Sabrina passing the ball to Stewie or Betnijah, Laney. I want to see more of that. Just fast play, so that like the defense doesn't get a chance to sort of recover. And when they play like that, they're unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, Brandello has always been saying that throughout the season. When they play with pace, when they play with speed, they are lethal. And, obviously you may not be able to keep that up the entire game, but you definitely need to have stretches where you are playing with pace and you can get down the floor very quickly. So for the other team, that their defense is not set and you keep them on the back foot, essentially.
Yeah, so first half, great execution, great defense on Jewell Loyd, who I think only had like 5 or 8 points, which they had a really great defense on her. She had a lot of 4 shots, a lot of missed shots. So you felt great at halftime. 44-27 at halftime, 7 assists, 8 steals, and the Jewell Loyd that is not very consistent on offense. So once again, we probably felt like it was going to be an easy night. But the problem with the Liberty is consistency. They really struggle. They have those bursts where they're just unstoppable for 1 or 2 quarters. But they've struggled so far to have a consistent 40 minutes, like from top to bottom, like a dominant performance. And so unfortunately, third quarter and fourth quarter, the Storm sort of came back like under 10 points. And Jewell Loyd and Sammy Wickham, the former Liberty player, were on fire. But I mean, what can you say about Jewell Loyd? She was incredible. She had those step back free. I mean, Marine was on her, but she was like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna take a little step back and shoot from 9 to 10 feet. Like it's just. I mean,
she's a phenomenal player. I mean,
she's the gold member. She has a nickname by Kobe.
The gold mamba.
The gold mamba. So
you cannot sleep on Jewell Loyd. Even if she had, a few points in the first half, she's not gonna just lay down and let her team just go lose. I think, it's also a reason why she's an all-star. She is going to do everything she can to keep her team and get her team back in this game. And she did that. She put the team on her back and she tried with all her might. And she rained down threes from every point on that court. And so to bring them back into the game and get it down to get the lead down to single digits. I think for the Liberty, they just have to not. I think sometimes for them, they take their foot off the gas a little bit, and they tend to do that every game. I don't know what that is, but you can't have a lead and just think you're comfortable. This is now a league where at any point someone can start shooting threes and get hot. And for Seattle, you have Sammy Whitcomb, you have Jewell Loyd, and others that can easily shoot threes. Sammy Whitcomb has a very quick trigger, and she it wasn't that it was all threes. Like Sammy was getting in the paint. This was a game. Yeah,
blocking. She was doing everything.
Yeah, so this was an incredible game for both her and Jewell Loyd, but. The Liberty, they were able to withstand it. They were able to get back in the game. And, I don't think they were worried by any means, but I do think they have to really tighten up some things defensively, transition, defense. That is a weakness for them because once whether they make a shot or miss a shot, getting back down court sometimes. Like there was a play where Vandersloot, she missed a 3 and she was deep in the corner. And if you watch the play, she ran the whole court and outran most of the Liberty players.
Yeah.
To get and block a shot. And I was like, how is it that Vandersloot ran from the deep corner and outran all of you? And it was wild. I mean, the only person down there was Sabrina. She was the only one that was down there initially. And so, they need that spark. They definitely, with Sloot and others, they need that spark to push up. And they need to get speed. When they play with speed, they are lethal. But they also need that on the defensive end.
Yeah. And so when Jewell Loyd and Sammy Whitcomb brought the game back to 9 points. You were starting to be a little bit worried, but like you said, the Liberty were able to figure things out, putting some intensity back into the defense, causing once again a lot of turnovers for the Seattle Storms, which kind of helped the Liberty, get back into a comfortable lead. And Sabrina kind of woke up in the fourth quarter, being this offensive presence and being dominant. And Courtney Ionescu did notice post game. She said it was a question from Jackie Powell that on Sabrina Ionescu. She was like, "We're just different when she's on the floor. Whether we're making shots or not." She had a really big free when the Storm were on the run, and she make plays for other people. We understand as a team how different we are with her. And yeah, this season, obviously, she's not like the point guard of the team. She's like more of a scoring presence, and we definitely felt her missing presence when she had the hamstring injury. And her coming back, she can bring that offensive game that we wish was more present against the Aces, but she woke up at the perfect time in the fourth quarter to set the win, 81-66. And so overall, a relatively good road trip for the Liberty.
Yeah.
2-1, I think that's what we predicted, before that road trip. Obviously, we would have wanted a 3-0 road trip, but 2-1 is pretty good. And I think there's a lot of things that the team can learn from that road trip moving forward. So before we put an end to this episode, just a couple of things. So Ann Shu, who had a tremendous Asian Cup, she was the MVP of the Asian Cup, and brought the win for China. They beat Australia in the semifinal, Japan in the final, and she was just dominant throughout the whole competition. So she's gonna come back to New York on Wednesday. The Liberty are facing the Phoenix Mercury on Wednesday, so I don't know. It's very unlikely that she would be ready to play on Wednesday, because obviously it's a long travel back to the U.S. and just sort of reacclimate herself and just get a bit of rest. But that was, I think, a very interesting time and hopeful time for Ann Shu. Brandello did mention recently that Ann Shu initially had the greatest training camp, but they were really hoping and encouraging her to make the best out of the Asian Cup, to come back to the team more confident and with a lot of playing time. So I think it's going to be interesting, especially with Dawson still being out with an ankle injury. What would be the role for Ann Shu coming forward?
You're going to need to play her, for sure. You need that presence. You need some defensive presence. And she needs time. She needs time on the court. I love Ann Shu. I think that she should definitely get more playing time. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I don't like to see her come in. I know at some of the home games, people are, when she's there, people are rooting. There's like, we want Shu or we want Han, and so, but they're doing that in like the last 2 minutes of a game. And then
she actually asked the fans to stop doing that out of respect. Like, I think that makes her feel a little uncomfortable. She appreciates the fans' love, but I think, she's like, this is not the reason why I want to be on the court, because the fans push Brandello to put me on. She wants to be there because
she earned it.
That she earned a spot. But I think like Brandello also mentioned that for her to be herself. I mean, I know she was a great 3-point shooter last season, and it was very surprising. But I don't want her to just like, as soon as she gets the ball, just take a free. Like, the Asian Cup showed that she could be dominant also on the inside, also have a lot of rebounds, be a decisive factor for a team. Now, obviously, you could argue that the Asian Cup is not on the same level as the WNBA, but you still have to put those numbers, though. And so I definitely feel like, she can bring something different to the team, but not like become a caricature like you had mentioned in the previous podcast, like be a gimmick and just like do what the fans want her to do, and just be herself. So I really hope that moving forward we're gonna see more of Anshu in a different role than what we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, and I think, she has to be in the paint.
Yeah.
Like, hands down. Like, I know she can make threes, and that's all well and good, but that should not be her primary position. She should not be outside. That she needs to be on the inside, getting those rebounds, being aggressive. You are taller. Is she the tallest player in the league? Yeah,
I think she is. Yeah.
So you got to get every rebound. You need to put her in there for sure. But I think they should definitely play her more now that Dolson, is still injured. She's out. They need another presence. They need that height, especially in the paint, for defense and offense.
Yeah, and so really looking forward to this week. We're finally back home. It felt weird to not have a single home game this past week, but we're gonna have 2 home games this week. So the Phoenix Mercury are back at the Barclays Center on Wednesday, and so hopefully it looks like we're gonna have Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi on the court. They recovered from the injury. And then on Saturday, we're facing again the Seattle Storm, but this time at home for the very first time on Saturday. So really looking forward to those 2 matchups. And so thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And once again,
let's go Liberty!